Hi, everybody. We are here at our PLC. Glad everybody could make it. So I want to go over our norms as we start our meeting, as we always do. Our norms here in PLC, we have all agreed to be on time with our materials, any technology we need, our laptops. We want to be sure that we are being respectful and professional to one another. Remember, be helpful and not hurtful to one another. We are always here to work as a team. We want to be sure that we are staying focused on our students and our data that we're going over. We want to be sure that we're actively engaged on task. And we want to share best practices with one another. And last, we want to be sure that we are receiving and providing constructive criticism during this PLC time. So again, thanks guys, and I'm glad we could go over the norms. So as we start this PLC, let's just jump right in and go over our lesson plans. Let's just start with third grade math. You want to share your lesson plan?
Yes, so I can share about my lesson plan. I think we started off really good. The kids were engaged and they really enjoyed the first activity that we had. It was very hands-on for them. But what I noticed that we struggled was identifying different forms for each one, like expanded forms. Some of them made some simple errors with place value there. And then another thing that I noticed that we had an issue with is they couldn't decide like how many tens, how many hundreds were in the number and how to have it in different ways. So for example, if the number was 320, it could have been 32 tens, and they didn't understand that that was 320. So we had some difficulty in understanding that part of it.
Yeah, that's always hard for the kids. They're still struggling in fourth grade. I'll go ahead and share about my lesson. They definitely are still struggling with that, and we're still trying to spiral that in. And our lesson was, as we discussed last time, about like, what is the value of a number? Because, in the past, those questions have really tripped them up on the STAR test. So what is the value of the digit this in whatever number? So I think the thing that they're struggling with, it's such a big leap from third grade to fourth grade with like going all the way to the billionth place. And they're just, it's a lot for them and they're struggling with that. So, they've been, at least it's teaching them to be resourceful. They're using the on the wall stuff, the anchor charts. They're using their math journal. So that's important. And I know that we've talked a lot about integrating writing into our lesson. So that was something I really harped on in this lesson. And it showed in the exit tickets that went really well. So I feel like cross-curricular is going well. And they just need more practice. I think that place value is really tough for them. And I think it would be worth it to spend more time on place value for sure.
Mm-hmm. So I think definitely they need more time with place value. I know it's one of the shortest units, especially in fifth grade. And so in fifth grade, they're a little better with that expanded notation concept, but it's still really hard for them to grasp. And I think that they're coming from fourth grade where their decimals it's only going to the hundredths, and they can see where that aligns to maybe like money. I know it's aligned to money a lot of the times, but then they get into fifth grade, my lesson, and it goes into the thousands, and they don't see that often. And so during my lesson plan, one of the real world questions I asked was, where would you be able to find that? And that was something that was really hard for them to come up. I had to be sure to bring in like gas pump receipts, that goes to the thousands. And sometimes on our receipts that we get from the grocery stores as well, it goes into our tax, like 8.25. And so I wanted to be sure to show them that, because I don't think that they've been exposed to that very often. So it's kind of a hard concept for them to grasp. And one of the things I noticed, like you were saying, they needed to use their journals. and they needed to refer back to them. So that was one thing I was very sure to do, was have them glue in an anchor chart in their journal. And also we made a journal or anchor chart together. But the very first anchor chart we did, I just had them take it and glue it in so they could refer back to it. But that was really hard for them because they weren't sure why. Like, what is the purpose of this anchor chart? We're just, putting paper into our journal. And so I needed to be sure that even though it was something they would refer back to, I should have waited until we could go over all that together and talk about it so that they had some connection to the anchor chart. So that was one thing about my lesson for sure that happened.
Yeah,
I
that's
really like that
sorry.
you
Go
made
ahead, Victoria.
about having them make a connection with that anchor chart, right? It has to have some value to them, because if not, it's just a pretty little thing that you drew up there for them. So I really enjoyed. I like that.
Yeah. I think that it does really make it more valuable to them. But I liked how you said that they don't really see decimals to the thousandth, because you said, I remember we were talking about it last time in PLC, and you were like, examples, and I couldn't even think of one. Like, I was like, pi, but don't know that yet unless we introduce that to them. So, and these are really used in science, for all those physics, chemistry. So it's difficult to have them see the value. And so it's important to continue to have those real world situations. So I like that you did that with them.
Yeah.
I think it's really good for us to see how place value grows, right, between grade levels, starting from third grade, what it looks like going to fourth and fifth, and then knowing as a third grade teacher that it'll eventually, like, there's a big jump into fourth grade, and then in fifth grade, you have a smaller unit to cover so much.
Right. So, and what I was able to tell with them as well is that it was a really solid foundation with them, with the academic vocabulary of just the decimals and saying, and when they see that decimal point, and it's so important because they need to know, like, when they're going to say that, and that's where the decimal goes. And that helped them line up their decimals, especially when they've got to the billions, to the left of the decimal, and now they've added on another after with the thousandths. So it was very important for them to hear that academic vocabulary of thousandths, and so I could tell that it had been across from third to fourth and now fifth. It helped a lot in fifth grade when I was teaching that lesson.
Yeah, I was going to say last year, because you have my kids this year from last year. So last year we would do that. Sometimes, how people say $5,035 or whatever, like, I harped on them that no, that's incorrect. When you say and, that means a decimal. And so it was really difficult to break them out of that. And it's like no one's fault. That's how people speak, and that's how we speak in the real world. So it was difficult to try to get them doing that.
I do have your students from last year. So tell me, I know we were doing our math lesson, but were they like this in reading as well?
Well, they really actually enjoy reading a lot more than math. So that they struggle a lot more in math. I feel like in reading, since there's such big concepts, like whenever we get to math and it's like these details of decimals and place value, and they just really struggle with a lot of that. So I had to try really hard to be super like engaging in math, like kind of like an actress. And it was challenging. So I know that they have a lot of growing to do as well.
Yeah. I was just wondering about our reading lessons too. That just made it better.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of reading, I was reading this like really funny article the other day about, margaritas and how delicious they are. And so, it was just really funny, and I'll have to share it with you guys. So I'm going to do that now. I'm just going to send it to y'all if that's okay.
Yes.
Can we go really quickly to talking about the using of the word and?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
You're right.
Because I think that's really important. I feel like in third grade, I forget that. And sometimes I say I add "and" in there without realizing how it affects fifth grade as well.
Yes. I appreciate you doing that from third grade on, because I know I don't always hear it. I don't always hear it. So yes,
Cool.
definitely.
Yes. And
So now, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just saying we can move on. I just remembered on the process checker, so want to make sure that we keep going. So thanks for that, Victoria.
Oh, you're
Yes.
welcome. And I'm writing down our notes and making sure that, we take down what's important.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. So we did talk about, we reflected on our lessons. Now what I want to do is just kind of do some data analysis with our exit tickets. So third grade, who wants to go first, talking about their data?
So I can go first. I can tell you kind of my reflection on mine. And so I'm going to just put in here third grade, so that way I'm reflecting on mine. So what I noticed on my exit ticket is I did have some kids who didn't do really well, and I have a small group that I have to look at. But what I also noticed is that I might have not aligned it really well to the rigor of the STAR test. I think it was very simple for them. It just, like, the questioning wasn't there, so they didn't have a lot of reading to do where they had to process and think about it. And so I think I need to really think about how I'm going to align the rigor to the STAR, because it was very simple for some kids, but then also some kids who are the kids who are struggling didn't do really well. So I'm going to show you my data really quickly. So on mine, I'm going to scroll down. What I noticed is I had this 20%, this 26% of students who didn't do well. They only did the standard form. So they did not do the word form, expanded form, or a pictorial model. And then this group of two only did one form. So most of the time they chose either the pictorial model, or maybe a few chose the word form. They didn't do that much of the expanded or word. Those seem to be the two that they struggled with. So what I'm also looking at is I need to reflect, because this is 47% of my class who is kind of on the below average. So it's a little bit, less than half of my class that needs to be reinforced on how to find the different types of forms.
Why do you think that they mostly use like pictorial? Like, I feel like I understand why they don't use word, because that's so tied into writing. And we know that having them write is like pulling teeth. So, I understand that piece, but why would they go to pictorial? Because it seems like that's challenging, like I feel like that's a little bit more challenging than the others.
Yes, I think it's because we did a lot of hands-on activities. And so we had a lot of models. And so they had to show me by using the different manipulatives that they're able to show, the hundreds, the thousands, and the tens. And so I think for them that seemed easy, because it's something that they had already been used to showing over and over.
Okay.
We've had a lot of practice on that one. That's why I think for them it was like, oh, I can draw that out and then write 100, or whatever the percentage was, or whatever the value was for that.
Yeah, thanks for telling me that. I'm going to write that down, because that's something I need to do a better job of, is the manipulatives. And I know, like, once it gets above the thousands place, that the physical manipulatives might not be as accessible, but they do have those like picture manipulatives that I could be using. So yeah, thanks. That's a good idea.
That's exactly what I was thinking too. Especially, with my low group, when they're coming to work with me at the back table, like, they definitely need those pictures. They need to have a manipulative in their hand to understand how they're taking apart this number or putting it together. And they're not like actually there, but I noticed you can print them, and that's super helpful to the students.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So and I'll go ahead and go next for fourth grade. So what I did was, so my exit ticket was really simple, because it's still like at the beginning stages. So we haven't gotten to the rigor of the STAR test yet, but so I had them do it on Post-it notes. And my rubric, if you want to click on my data, Ms. Torres.
Yes.
So I pulled one of my 4s, which was awesome, because look at this. This kiddo like wrote a a place value chart at the top, and the value of the 2 is 20,000 because it's in the 10,000s place. So that was like the exemplar. And then for my 3, if you can scroll up to the rubric, I think it's at the top. Yeah. So then the 3, they just wrote 20,000 and 10,000's place. They didn't put it in a sentence form, and I gave them a sentence stem. So they just, you know, kind of ignored that. And then for a 2, like all of them are different. And that's the thing that I think during the data analysis, I really want to dive into, like finding the, like, cause these 3 are all 2s, but they're all different, you know, 2. So I want to look at that. And then 1, like this poor kiddo says the value is 2 and the place value is 2. And so like that, you know, that kiddo struggles a lot. And so definitely with these ones, I have 3 of them. I want to do like maybe tutoring and small groups and just work with them intensely, because I feel like the mark was missed with these kiddos. So yeah, so that's my exit ticket. And if you scroll to the bottom, like you said, so there's 30% of my kids, which, you know, doesn't seem like a lot, but that's 6 kids out of 20. So I pulled all of their exit tickets. Like I didn't pull all my 3s and 4s because they're, you know, they're going to get there. But the 1s and 2s, I did pull them so that I could look at those and kind of get to the root of the problem. Like where was the mark missed? So they're going to be my small group kids, I think.
That's a good though chunk, you know, 50% that are getting 4. That's a really good percentage of your kids that hit that mark.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, they did a great job. So, I mean, my class has a lot of GT students. So I actually am trying to think about pushing them a little bit more. So.
Yeah, I also like that it's in Word, like that you had them write a sentence out with it. I think it makes them think a little bit differently when they're thinking about math and how they do math. So that was really good. They have to explain a little bit more of their answer.
Right, exactly.
I think too, being in 4th grade, you just have to also, it was a good way to connect across your content areas. You know, writing, of course, is part of 4th grade. So it was really good. Love it.
Yeah. Thanks.
So if you want, and now I can go over my data as well. I know we need to be sure we are keeping on time with our PLC. So I'll go over my data. And if you will scroll all the way to the bottom for me as well, there you go. So what I had them do on my exit ticket was deconstruct a number and then add it up. What I wanted to be sure, since again, this was the beginning of our unit, I wanted to be sure that they knew how to line up their decimals correctly, and then of course add the numbers correctly to come up with, and then check. Is this number you started with the same as what you got over here once you deconstructed that number, lined up decimals, and then added them back together? So it was more of a check for myself as far as where do I need to start? Who do I need, you know, in my small group to talk about why it's important to line up decimals? And then maybe, you know, kind of go from there. Who didn't add their numbers correctly? And that would be maybe something different. I could get manipulatives involved with their adding, you know, into my small group. So I know that my exit ticket was very simple. Again, not really rigorous enough, you know, star level rigor. It was just taking apart the number and adding it together. But I wanted to be sure that their foundation was there so we could then keep going to the next step in our unit. And so on mine, I had 2 students who just did not attempt to take apart that number. And so in looking at their exit ticket, I know when I'm pulling those 2 specifically, I'm going to be going over how to take apart a number, because I know that this concept is hard for students. This, you know, expanded notation concept is really hard for them to understand. So I want to be sure to pull those 2 students and go over it, you know, very explicitly. This is how it's going to be done, step by step by step, and having the manipulatives and referring to the anchor chart. My 2s, I had 5 students who did not line up the decimals correctly. So we need to be sure. And to me, that's a big chunk of students to know, okay, in small group, this is how it's done. You know, be sure, here's your decimal, lining up the numbers, going over some tips on how to do that with those students. And also, I had 5 students who just did not add the numbers correctly. And that, again, even though they didn't add correctly, I think it still had to do with a little bit of the decimals and seeing so many zeros and then the number. So I kind of want to pull them and do like a quick mini lesson as well. And then again, of course, I had 8 students who were, you know, the exemplars who did it correctly, lined up decimals, added all their numbers. So one thing I want to be sure to do, especially with the ones who were a 1 or 2 or a 3, is even use some graph paper to help them with lining up their numbers. That way, you know, they'll be sure I want to put the decimal on there and they can, you know, work from there. And then once we have gotten that down, then kind of up those exit tickets to get it to star level rigor.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So now that we have all talked about our data, I know that on our meeting agenda, the next step in our agenda is just any action steps that we can take to, and for our action plans. What are our next steps? And I know that I kind of talked a little bit about what my next steps were and going over my data. Just I know I want to use graph paper. I know I want to get manipulatives in the hands of my students, and then just up the rigor level of my exit ticket.
Okay, great. I sent you, if you want to check your phone, I sent you a resource that you could use when lining up your decimals.
That's perfect.
And, you know, I have a 5th grade friend who did that, or a 5th grade teacher friend. So,
I love it. Thank you. I will definitely use that.
Okay.
Ms. Torres, anything else? Any action plan you want to take?
I think for me is just going to be working with my small group.
Okay. Good job. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming to our PLC today and going over our lesson plans, and we will see you next week.
Thank you.
Okay, good job, guys. Bye.
Bye.